Good morning. I have a special shirt on for today's service, so I want to make sure you can see it. It says Heretic. And I wanted to talk about covenant today because in a lot of the Tea with Reverend D events that we have been doing, you all have had a lot of questions about covenant. So that's today's topic as we go through the service. As always, I want to thank the wonderful team that helps put all the work into these services, our fabulous staff, and thanks to the board and our congregation. I got lots of great feedback to help me shape today's worship, and I appreciate it. And big thanks to Kelly, who did a last minute little favor for me today. Thanks to Jen for our music and Dave for our Time for All Ages. You're going to hear from Susan Endez doing some of our readings today too. So big thanks to everyone. Your questions are vast about covenant. And when Reverend Suzelle talked about this month being on how to be UU, I knew I wanted to talk about covenant because it's such a complex topic. It's taken me years to even get the understanding that I have, and I'm still working at it. And yet it's huge. Being UU and being in covenant is a practice, just like medicine is a practice or Tai Chi is a practice. It's something we can return to again and again. Now, to all of you who are here, whoever you are, from wherever you come, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, however you define family, you are welcome. The identities you hold and how you want to be called and the pronouns you choose are respected and welcome here. Whatever the color of your skin, the language your grandparents spoke, the cultures that move in your being, the abilities and disabilities you hold, we welcome you. Whatever you believe, whatever your theology, your prayer, or your sacrament, even if none at all, we welcome you. We unite in Unitarian Universalist principles. We are a community of communities, spiritual seekers acting out our faith and justice. And we are united in covenant, united in the spirit of love. And so this morning and always, we welcome all of you. Welcome to our service of love. Now it is time to light our chalice.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. A sacred vessel made from earthly clay, it is filled with the mind's fire, the heart's warmth, and the spirit's spark. As we light our chalice this day, we illuminate anew the world we are called to serve with justice and compassion.
Is no causes no care than love leaving, causes no care than of despair. Come, come, yet again come, 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 whoever you're leaving, causes no care than love leaving, causes no care than of despair. Come, yet again come.
Good morning. I'm Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at Unitarian Universalist Church West. The pronouns I prefer people use for me are he, him, and their. Our story today is the Treehouse Rules. It comes from Love Connects Us, which is a program on living in Unitarian Universalist Covenant for grades 4 to 5. Now, every UUCW religious education class and covenant group, and probably most other committees and affinity groups, begins with the creation of a group covenant, an agreement among participants on how they will be and play and work and grow with each other. Now, covenant is not so much a set of rules like no hitting or don't interrupt, so much as it is a description of how members of a group will engage with each other, like treat each other with respect or give each person the space to speak their own truth. In creating and being in covenant with each other, participants build a safe community rooted in trust and love. Now, before I get to the story, let me point out that this whole process will be taking place in many RE classes and adult covenant groups as they start up again as soon as next month. Registration of children and youth is now open, so please see your e-news announcements or the church website for details. And we'll be announcing adult programs soon. Now, the Treehouse Rules did not happen at UU Church West, but it could have. Our congregation is like many others, made up of people with great intentions and also forgetful of the power to be found in trusting relationship. The Treehouse Rules. The treehouse was built on the congregation's grounds over 3 Saturdays in September, using donated lumber and the donated labor of the families who attended the church and other adults who wanted to help with the project. Even the kids got involved, especially those aged 10 and up, by pitching in and helping in any way they could during the construction. It was a fantastic place to be once it was completed, with a window that faced the nearby playground, a rope ladder to climb up, and a slide to exit. While everyone was happy that the treehouse was there after all the planning and construction, it soon became a problem. When too many kids wanted to enjoy it at once, their different ideas about how to use it came into conflict with each other. The younger kids got a thrill out of running races through it, hurriedly climbing up the rope ladder, rushing through the treehouse to race down the slide over and over again, one after the other. But the older kids wanted to hang out in the treehouse after the worship service ended, playing games like jacks and cards. One day, a 2nd grader, racing by, interrupted the 5th grader's game of cards for the 3rd time. That was it. A fight broke out, with name-calling, pushing, and some tears. Some adults demanded that the treehouse be off-limits until the children learned to cooperate with each other. Other adults protested that their children had special rights to use the treehouse because they had helped to build it. The Religious Education Committee had meetings about a policy for the use of the treehouse. They were getting ready to report to the congregation's board of directors with their findings. Meanwhile, the minister considered bringing in a consultant from the district to address the conflict, which had now spread through the entire congregation. But while the adults were arguing, holding meetings, and creating policies, something happened. The children who had been temporarily banned from the treehouse started talking to each other and looking for ways they could all use the playhouse together. A few of them remembered the covenants they had created in their RE programs the year before. They suggested a covenant could be created for how the kids could use the treehouse. So they sat down and talked about why they liked it and what made the treehouse so fun. They discovered ways they could all enjoy their treehouse in the way they wanted to. They came up with a covenant which laid out how they would be in the treehouse and how they would respect others who were also using the space. Just as the adults were starting a congregational meeting to adopt a policy for use of the treehouse, some church leaders looked out the window. They saw the children cooperating with each other and using it without conflict. A teenager was dispatched to the treehouse to discover what rules the participants had come up with. When she reported back to the adults at the congregational meeting, the announcement came that the participants had created a covenant with one another. The adults were humbled. Some sheepishly glanced at their church covenant, framed on the wall, hanging there and mostly forgotten. The congregational meeting was adjourned. The adults went on their way, reminded of the power of covenants, working together to find a solution, and the commitment of people in right relationship with one another. All because of the treehouse rules. What struck you most about this story? How did the kids come to reach a compromise, and why were they able to do so when the adults were not? I haven't been part of UUCW for long enough to have any personal experience with internal conflicts like the one in the story, but I'm sure they've occurred. Conflict is just part of the human experience. What's less common, though, is the model of allowing those directly involved to solve the problems respectfully and cooperatively, even when they're younger. So how do people in our congregation or in our RE classes reach compromises? Luckily, we UUs have a theology valuing hope, joy, love, courage, and justice. And it's through the process of solving together sticky situations like the treehouse issue, even when doing so becomes a bit uncomfortable, that we grow spiritually. So does UUCW have a covenant? What does it say? Who created it? And how is it used? I think we'll learn more about this today and in the weeks to come.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Dave. You know, a lot of us, I know we're all feeling it, that we wanted to be done with pandemic by now, and we're kind of having it ramp up. We are having it ramp back up. And we need each other right now to continue to be in community together in ways that are safe. And I think more than anything, we need each other to cheer one another on and tell one another that we are going to get through this. It is better than when we didn't have vaccines. It is improved that we know how much masking can help, and fresh air and things like that. And so I wanted to take some time today to have a meditation. Sometimes in service, when we are having joys and concerns in service, I do a meditation or a prayer after we've shared those. Don't forget to share those with Reverend Suzelle and I. You can always email them to us and we'll include it in the Spirit Lifter you get on Tuesdays. If you don't get the Spirit Lifter, please contact us at the office and we will help figure that out with you. And Kelly had a great message a few weeks ago on Realm about that. And so I think that's really important for you to make sure you're getting all the communications from us. Make sure you've churned on the member-to-member communications in Realm, and your email address isn't sending all our messages to your junk. And I'm not saying that just to be an advertisement. I'm saying that because we need each other right now. I'm going to share a brand new poem by my friend and colleague, Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto today. If you don't know their work, they have a wonderful book called Spilling the Light. And I love this book. It's small. It's inexpensive, and I use it often, and a lot of you see me quote from it. And I called Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto this week and said, I saw you just did a new poem on pandemic. And I think a lot of our congregants are feeling how you are. Could I use it in service? So I'd like you to give yourself some breath, however that's comfortable for you, whether that's in through your nose and out through your mouth. I know you're weary and tired, and you're kind of confused because I'm all those things too. What is the next best step? So today I want to introduce this poem called In My Daydreams. And Reverend Soto is talking about they went and took a new call to be the called minister, the called senior minister at our Oakland congregation, and kind of talked about what they were imagining. And then we had pandemic. And I don't know about you, but I know I was imagining that this time of year I'd be having lots of big picnics and I would be going places with friends. And I would probably be traveling more, but I'm doing things differently. And so I ask you to go back to your daydreams as we go and read this new piece. Be mindful of your breath and the position of your body. Feel free to calm your eyes or cast them down. Open your heart. In my daydreams, living in the Bay Area was going to mean getting sweaty dancing at Bungra nights, attending painting classes, adaptive sports, boxing, archery, rock climbing. But the universe required a different thing, and instead I spend my time thinking about who is breathing on whom and whether they can survive it. And we were always meant to become exquisite at love, and we still shall. Wash your hands, wear your mask, take vaccines. Love is stronger than unlove. Not a competition, just how it exists, much like the moons who don't much care if you get mad when you can't see them. Shine.
Our reading is Fitted for This Day by Kimberly Quinn Johnson. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones we have been waiting for.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. When you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till I'm gonna be somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow. No one can fill all of your needs that you don't let go. When you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till I'm gonna be somebody to lean on. Mom, brother, we all need somebody to lean on. Just might have a problem that you understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Call me. Call me. Call
All right, thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Today's sermon is titled Covenant is the Cornerstone. 3 of the main stones used in the building processes are the capstone, the keystone, and the cornerstone. Each type of stone performs a specific function, and the design of a building, like the one behind me, is integral to take those all into consideration. Likewise, our congregations, principles, and covenants provide the foundation of our UU faith. A lot of people don't realize it, but covenant is much older than the principles. Our UU principles have only been around for a few decades. And we often think of principles as the most integral, I think because they're numbered. It's so handy, right? Covenant is harder to wrap our hands around. Capstones are protective stones designed to shed water away from the structure and prevent damage. They might be seen as the folks who make coffee and the best potluck dishes in a congregation. A keystone is a wedge, a pie-shaped stone at the center of an arch to evenly distribute the weight and keep the arch balanced. Staff and great volunteers are keystones in a church. Cornerstones, however, have three distinct characteristics that distinguish it from the other stones used in construction: building orientation, history, and celebration. History shows the cornerstone was the first stone set during the building process. The cornerstone is foundational. When buildings were made of stone, the placement of the building was not determined by village boards and ordinances, but instead by the stars. Many ancient and indigenous cultures believed the placement of a structure would impact prosperity and success. They lined their buildings up to face northeast, to key into direct lines of nature and the cosmos in order to build their buildings with harmony, peace, and prosperity. The cornerstone was so important that when it was placed, priests and spiritual leaders led ceremonial rituals for the community. In churches, we can think of capstones like folks who try to prevent damage. They might be warning us to look at the church as a system, which you'll hear me and Reverend Suzelle talk about a lot. Those people also might be our elders or wise young families and the board all working together to protect the structure. And that's not just the building structure, but the structure of how the community works together. Think of a keystone as the people in the community that we want to recruit to be volunteers or to help lead our groups. They're from all over the community. They can be all ages. They see that everyone from children to elders are contributors to the community and all are needed. We can also think of our bylaws as keystones. They are fine-tuned to protect and involve the whole community. The cornerstone for Unitarian Universalists is covenant. Our entire faith is built on covenant. Other faiths have a creed. Their covenants are closed. They might operate from one book like the Bible that covers all the lessons they need to learn. Those religions tell you what to think. UUs offer new ways to think and expose us to a variety of thoughts, and you choose from ongoing learning. Ongoing learning is essential to being Unitarian Universalist, adding and expanding to your understanding. That's why I have on this heretic shirt today, because heretic, you'll hear me talk about in a little bit, was always about choice and kind of examining things. And that examination is what makes us different from a creedal faith. So, since we don't think about the same things, we need to find ways to act in harmony with one another. I sometimes hear people try to say, well, Unitarian Universalists are anything goes, and that is not true. I like to say all people are welcome, all behaviors are not. But we use covenant to find ways to act in harmony with one another. That's what we use instead. We have individual churches and teams and ministers and boards all making promises to one another about how we will be when we are together, and those are based on our principles. But we've been doing it since before we had principles written down in that form. All the stones hold up our principles, and we check what we do consistently against that set of principles. If you've ever attended a board meeting or one of our committees, you might hear us saying, well, how does that measure up to what our covenant tells us to do? How is our Unitarian Universalist faith going to influence how we act out in justice? Now, there's a popular activist that gets talked about a lot, Jesus. And Jesus, I got to tell you, really got what covenant was all about. Covenant is not about authority or demands. Covenant is not a business contract. Covenant should never be a set of hard and fast rules that carry a punishment. You either obey it and you're out. That's not how we work. In fact, covenanting should be aspirational. How do we dream to be when we are together? Because that's how we go back to the covenant and say, are we fulfilling that? What else could we do to act within our covenant, to call one another back to covenant? So to live in covenant, we have to help one another to be better people. For the ministers, the board, and the staff, and the congregation to live into covenant, we all need help. I need help. We are not separate entities, but folks who are all needing kindness and nurturing. When we feel stressed and upset is when breaking covenant happens. It can always be of service to say, let's take a deep breath. Let's pause a moment. You can pause in your families. You can pause in your business meetings. There's no rule that you have to have words being spoken all the time. Those moments of pause are where we can sometimes call ourselves back to covenant or call one another back. Now, I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine, Pat. Pat decided to build a fireplace insert for their home. They saved, they didn't go out to eat, they even gave up vacations and visiting family to get this new fireplace liner for their home. This couple had dreamed of sitting by the fire, and they were so excited to make their fireplace more efficient and to be able to finally snuggle up in their living room and have it be really cozy and watch the flames. They researched the company that would install it perfectly. The company aligned with their values. And when the installers came, Pat and Chris, Pat's partner, Chris, sat back watching it all. Sometimes the workers fumbled getting the pieces into the house and then into the fireplace insert. See, they had a small house, and it was tricky to get all the pipes around the corners. But they were paying good money, and these folks should be able to create a miracle fire that they were paying for. When one left some dust on the floor, Pat wrote a mediocre review on Facebook about them. After a week of fires, the insert cracked. My friend's spouse, Chris, was so mad. How could this happen to our brand new fireplace liner? Pat called the company and they said, this happens sometimes to liners, and the best way to remedy it is to weld that spot where it cracked. They told them that it would be 10 times as strong if they welded it. Pat said, how dare you want to take the easy way out? I demand that you give us a new one. If I would have known that that was your plan, I would have just gone to the non-union company down the street. So Pat and Chris were given a new fireplace liner. 2 weeks later, it cracked. Next, Chris grabbed the phone and yelled, what the Florence Buck were you thinking? We loved your company and you let us down. Frustrated by all the mess and all the time it took to install the new one, they wondered if their home was right for fires at all. Maybe fires are a bad idea, said Pat. Chris remarked, they are as bad as every other fireplace company. I thought we had chosen the progressive one that was advertised in UU World, the company that employs formerly incarcerated people and pays them a fair wage. Plus, they run their factory on solar and all their install trucks are electric. I mean, I am so disappointed. They are just as bad as every other fireplace company, said Pat. How many times have you felt that way about something that was happening? Well, Pat and Chris thought about it. Should they try to get their money back? Should they just forget all about fireplaces? And then their lovely grandchild came bouncing in, carrying organic graham crackers from the food co-op and homemade marshmallows and fair trade chocolate. And they asked, when can we roast marshmallows in our fireplace and make s'mores? Pat and Chris looked at each other. Get the phone, they exclaimed. When Pat found their cell phone, they paused. Chris knew what Pat was thinking. We have to apologize, don't we? Yes, we have to be kind and curious and apologize for rushing them when they were installing. And so they did. They were apologetic. And when curious about why their fireplace liner cracked, rather than accusing the company of bad business, the company was able to explain that some houses were a bit difficult to fit the fireplace insert in, and sometimes the bricks around the fireplace got bumped and needed to be reinforced. The installer came out and found that the fireplace arch indeed had a cracked cornerstone. They repaired it, and wow, it looked better than ever. And then they welded the cracked liner, and it was more secure than it had ever been. And so if you smell the air on a cool evening, you might even get a whiff of fair trade s'mores. See, breaking covenant is not about taking our toys and leaving, or our fair trade chocolate or our pledges and going home. It's not about ghosting or cutting folks off when we've messed up. Like the song says, though we've broken our vows 1,000 times, covenant asks us to come back to the table, come back around the fireplace. It asks us to listen and forgive. Now that takes courage and humility, and more than anything, it takes the goal to stay in relationship. One of my favorite professors, who used to be the president of Meadville Lombard Theological School, used to say, do you want to be right, or do you want to be in relationship? So church and family and friends, that's about being in relationship. It takes courage to create covenant, and that creation has to be driven by everyone. It can't be driven by people in power, whether that's positional power like boards or ministers, or systematic power like the loudest or the deepest, or the top volunteers or the bigger stoners, or the oldest or the male or the whitest, or any of that. Instead, the process has to be courageous enough to include all the voices of those who have agreed to freely come together in the process of creating and living out covenant. The hardest thing for me about covenant is that I have to prioritize relationship over being right. It takes courage and practice to treat everyone like a person with inherent worth and dignity. It's much easier to dehumanize people and not get to know them, or call secret meetings, or go around people, or have events where you don't invite everyone. How many times have you witnessed that in families even? Sitting down and having long conversations takes practice. It takes practice to figure out, how do we speak in I statements? How do we tell our story? It takes patience to be curious, to ask questions, and to listen. Really listen to multiple points of view and withhold judgment. I say this with full humility, that this is hard for me too. I need your help in this work. We all do. Likewise, forgiving is profound. Apparently, one of my dogs thinks forgiving is profound too. So, can we allow one another to crack and then help make that weld stronger than ever. Collectively, we can be stronger by helping the fireplace installer carry the pipes, by offering people the opportunity to make something right rather than demanding our money back. Board members and ministers and staff and friends and family, all those people you covenant with, they need kind notes and direct conversations, naming of feelings rather than judgment. Kindness means stepping back when things are hard or in our own lives and telling folks that you are having a difficult time. Many of you and I have gone through some very hard personal things while also carrying out the work of this faith. So be gentle with one another. We all need kindness. I know I need it. I need your help. You all need each other's help. I'm here to help you too. And so is Reverend Suzelle and the staff and the board. We all need this opportunity, any opportunity, to keep making things better. And you might wonder, how do I do this? Well, standing in front of my fireplace in my home, Reverend Matt helped me make a video to explain more. Hi, I'm Reverend Denise, and this is Reverend Matt, and he's going to help me out today with an explanation about how covenant works. Unitarians and Universalists have always been heretics, and a heretic was a really bad thing to be called. It was far worse than being a criminal. It was the lowest of the low. Unitarians and Universalists were heretics because they examined religious sources.
They wanted to design their faith, opposed to just believing what someone else had said without thought. Because of that, we have a faith where our covenant is not closed.
The word heresy derives from the word for choice. And during the first 300 years or so of Christian church, believers could freely choose among what variety of views they thought about Jesus or about God.
There were Unitarians believing in the unity or oneness of God, as opposed to Trinitarians who believed God manifested in three entities of Father, God, and Son and Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Covenant is the silk. Covenant is the silk that joins us. It's like the web that we are woven together with, like these silks that we have here.
The practice of promising to covenant together is the thread that binds us, creating our web of faith. Covenant is both a noun and a verb.
So many faiths have a closed covenant. So their covenant is sealed because all their answers come from a Bible or a Quran or Jewish scriptures, Hebrew scriptures. And so if that's their book, their covenant is closed.
These are spiritual texts where the covenant is closed. Here's a Bible.
Yep, it's sealed. That's the book they use to guide their faith.
And a Quran. And a
Hebrew scripture.
Hebrew scripture.
Mm-hmm. So in any one of those faiths, if that was their book, their covenant is sealed. There's no other stuff going in. If they learn that book, it's done. The box is shut.
Unitarian Universalists, however, have an open covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Our covenant is not sealed.
Yeah. That means that we write our covenants ourselves, and that could be a promise we make with Spirit or among other congregants. It could be a covenant we have with a team. There can even be family covenants, like we have family covenants. You could have a couple's covenant. Any of those could be covenants. There are also covenants that we make as Unitarian Universalists with other congregations and the Association of Congregations, the UUA.
Now you might be wondering, if we don't have just one book, where do we draw our covenant from?
We can use any of the books we put in the box before. We can draw from any of those. We also can draw from other books, other sources. What are your favorite books to draw from?
Well, I actually have a couple of them here. I love Dr. Sharon Welch's Feminine Ethic of Risk. It's a great book. Paul Razor's Faith Without Certainty is a favorite of mine. What else you got? I know you love Howard Thurman.
I have to have Howard Thurman, the mystic, all the mystical.
Yeah. I know you want to do this one, but I'm going to say goddess symbols. This looks really interesting to me. I haven't read this yet, but I think I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, and you've been checking out more and more women's feminist theology too.
I'm learning.
Yeah, I have to throw in some Brene Brown in mine because imperfection and daring greatly, it's got to be a part of how we do covenant.
I think we're running out of room.
We're running out of room in our box. We're going to need more boxes. I know you want to throw in some Buddhism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Music of Nature.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't forget Sacred Depths of Nature.
Oh, yeah.
That's my
that's Ursula Goodenough. And all right, we have to have some Mark Morrison Reed, right? You got to learn about our black UUs and our faith, and he is one of the experts.
Right.
So
this is going to fall over.
It's going to fall over, but I mean, we need art, we need Dolly Parton, we need all kinds of, I mean, you know, more Burnett. Oh, you got to have some more goddess study, right? And women's feminist and womanist theology.
Room for the broom.
Yeah, we need more in the room. Yeah, and some transcendentalism. You know, some mindfulness. The Unitarian Universalist covenant is not sealed. So covenanting is hard. It's hard to continue to learn all the new ways that Unitarian Universalism continues to open that covenant up wider. It's a lot easier to have a faith that just says this is what we believe and that's it. But we have a faith where we are active participants in creating the covenant, in opening up and expanding. And you're going to keep hearing about that from me and from all of us as time goes on this fall. My favorite thing about covenant is that unlike a contract, this is a way that we share how we want to be with one another. And when we fail, we keep helping one another come back to covenant. It's that help that's what makes our community so special. We help one another to be better together. We approach a person and say, that was an ouch for me, can we talk? Or, I don't understand why you did what you did, can you please tell me more? Covenanting offers grace and ways to come back into conversation with one another for deeper understanding. I try to apologize when I don't get it right, and sometimes I need to be told. Tell me gently, and I'll do my best to tell you gently too. We all want to do our best. Ministers and congregations and staff, we all help one another to do that. And in our families, we can do that too. How many ways can you think of that you could use that was an ouch for me, can we talk? Or can you tell me more about why that happened or what was going on there? I really need some more information. Covenant cannot be achieved. It is work we do together. And covenant is about how we treat one another and how we forgive one another. It's the often forgotten line in the familiar Rumi poem, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again, come. See, if we don't help one another, we cannot be in covenant. It doesn't happen by ordering someone to perform a certain way. Think of our church like all the bricks in those ancient buildings. They're all important. They all lean on one another. My colleague and friend, Reverend Kimberly Davis, said it well. We must all have the courage to actually get close enough to know one another, to get into intimate knowing and good friendships with one another, so that we really have that chance, so that covenanting means something. Even if we covenant with people who don't look like us or act like us or love like us, we must have the courage to commit to one another, commit to this community, commit to the community of communities that you are a part of. Trust one another, be deeply connected to other souls, and consciously covenant in healing, helpful ways to come again, come. Though we've broken our vows 1,000 times, we may be wanderers, worshipers, and lovers of leaving, but instead we must courageously say, come, yet again, come.
UUC Church West Split the Plate program is one of outreach and of generosity. Each month, we give half of all undesignated offerings to a nonprofit organization to help us live our Unitarian Universalist values and to serve our greater community. Our Split the Plate partner for mid-July through the end of August is the Gathering of Southeastern Wisconsin. The Gathering is a community of guests and of staff and of volunteers united by the common goal, which is to feed the hungry in mind, in body, and in spirit. At the gathering, volunteers provide 10 to 11 free meals each week, cooked on site at 4 different Milwaukee locations, to those who would otherwise go hungry. The gathering also offers services associated with ending hunger and homelessness and works to educate our greater community on hunger issues. They have continued their service throughout the COVID-19 pandemic by providing carry-out meal service and will continue to serve carry-out meals to the hungry until it is safe again to serve meals indoors. To support the gathering for the next 7 weeks, please go to the UUCW website's Donate tab and select Split the Plate from the menu provided. Or you can text or you can email your donation today using the information found here. Today, I thank you for your generosity to the gathering.
We are all working together to create a brighter future. Don't give up, dear ones. Our road is long. We can walk it together. Please reach out. My email and Reverend Suzelle's is in every single newsletter and spirit lifter that you get. Let us know if you need to be paired with one of our lay pastoral care team members, or if you want to talk about theology and these big questions you're wondering about. That's what I'm here for. If this pandemic, this world, or even covenanting opens your eyes to cracks in foundation, know we can always call one another back to covenant. It's never too late. It is a path of ever shaping, adding, and learning together. We, Reverend Suzelle, the board, the staff, myself, and this whole community, all invite you to join us in this never-ending path and process of strengthening our foundation and recommitting to covenant. The reward is warm and safe. Won't you join us in building covenants that we can all use to create joy for years to come?
We extinguish our chalice today with words by Krista Taves titled The Work We Share. It is our work, shared with each other in covenant, that creates and sustains this beloved community. We extinguish this chalice, but its light lives on in the directions we have chosen today. The light of this faith lives on in us, together in our hearts, minds, bodies, and spirits. Amen, and blessed be.